Hey everybody! I had a really interesting journey. I want to tell you about it. And it reminds me of the pyramid with the eye from the US dollar bill. I even drew us some pictures here to to have some fun as I tell you this story and we can look at the pictures. All right. Let me start here because I've got a lot on my mind and I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot of pathways to cover and I hope I can cover them in a sensible way so our brains can follow along together. The goal of the journey was to find out what is influencing the totality of the human race in an influence or inspiration that is creating degradation, that is creating a psychological abuse, that is, creating enslavement. And if I were to ask you a question about if you were to look at society, and you can answer it however you want, I feel like any answer would be correct. If you were to look at society, would you say simply that there's a high society and a low society? And those in high society influence those on the low end society, but isn't it possible the low end of society influences high society? So if we were to look at these pictures here, for instance, let's say this is high society. This is the most wealthiest people on the planet, not here, where the eye in the pyramid is, here. This is the top tier of society. And this is the next, until we get to the lowest of the lowest of the lowest of the lowest of the low. Those who are living in a reality of unbearable poverty, even. This could even be poverty. This could even be poverty. This could be middle class. Poverty gets real poor, okay? It's really hard to look at how poor poverty can really become. But you can see how realities differ based upon how much money you have. Because society is based upon money, right? So the high society is rich. Low society is poor. So do the poor people tell the rich people what to do? Do the rich people tell the poor people what to do? Or is it just money in general? Do we want the almighty dollar so that we can make all the decisions, or that we could have more power or more wealth or more of something so we could be at the top of the pyramid, that we could be in high society? So if you ask the question, who is influencing who? Why would high society be so insecure about low society? If you've achieved this great place, why wouldn't you be doing something to help those down here? Or would you just be doing something to help yourself? And maybe it requires a certain amount of helping oneself in order to achieve this. That isn't to think less of those up here, by the way. It's just a conversation, that's all. So I was thinking about, does high society influence low society? And I decided yes in this reflection. And that if I was going to help humanity as an energy healer, that I wanted to move energy that was influencing high society to make decisions that was actually not bringing balance to the whole thing. This has to be a total heart, okay? This has to be everybody working together, helping each other out, where the well-being of each other is at the forefront of each level of society, which each level of society is also a reality. So those who live here are going to experience a totally different experience of planet Earth than those who live down here. I'm telling you this because this was the influence for my journey that actually took me to this eye in the pyramid, which I'll take, moving along here. I have this picture. As you can see, I put Earth, and I'll explain what this is. But here's on the dollar bill, you see a pyramid, you'll see an eye. And the eye is even higher than high society. This is what you think is in power. This is what you never would have believed was in power. The reason I did this picture is because a few times, randomly, and I haven't explored this more in depth to give you more detail about it, and it's the strangest thing, but I've witnessed an energetic pyramid that contains planet Earth. That planet Earth exists inside a massive energetic pyramid. And that the one who exists here at the top of the pyramid, which I call the collective guardian, or over here, is influencing everything having to do with planet Earth. Everything. And all the people on the planet. Everything having to do with planet Earth. That's why knowing who this is so important. I didn't expect my journey to explore who was influencing the degradation or the tyranny of planet Earth. I mean, I just made the video about North Korea, and I was really impacted by doing healing there and just learning more about what life is like for people in North Korea. It's heartbreaking. It's terrifying. It's cruel. Like, we can't let that exist here. And who are we to tell other people how to live their life? I feel like there has to be a certain standard of expectation, a certain standard of well-being that all human beings deserve to have access to that. And nobody should be so poor that the vultures are just waiting to eat their bodies and they're just little kids. I don't feel that planet Earth is not this abundant garden where all can receive. You know, we need to start figuring out how all can benefit, how all can be of value, you know. So this pyramid that the Earth is inside of somehow influences us to create society that reflects the very pyramid that we exist within. Now society reflects it somewhere along the line, which I'll still explain the journey. This I call the collective guardian. You could imagine it much like, let's say you have a human body. Here's my human body. Let's say a single cell within my body decides that it wants to be in control of everything. How would that work exactly? And what exactly is in control of this body? You would say, oh, it's your brain that's in control of this body. Well, what about my heart though? What about my liver? What about my toes? My toes have a reason for being part of the total balance of my existence. You know, that all that I am, whether it's physically visible or perhaps not visible to the naked eye, like an energy body. How about our emotional body? Where do the emotions come from? You say in your brain, but how come you feel butterflies in your stomach? How can you feel anxiety in different places? And it's like, what works together in order to create this? But if I were to look at it in the energy world, I would see another layer to the dynamic of what creates an animated human body. It's very interesting. So imagine a cell in the human body decides to take over. Now imagine a human being decides to be the collective guardian. I met the collective guardian, and that's what my journey was so shocking, and I'll tell you about this. Now the cell wants to be the collective guardian. The cell is inspired, whether it was consciously decided or subconsciously decided. Maybe it was the ego all along that certain human beings born would be more inspired by the ego than others. But let's say it's all ego that exists here. And that ego, that the collective guardian is the total body. But only ego gets to make all the decisions. So ego, let's say, created money or wealth in order to amputate our access to the collective guardian, which is the total body. So now we become God, right? The collective guardian isn't God. It's just a cosmic being. It's like the body that we exist within. And when the collective guardian is in balance, when we understand its existence and we are in gratitude of its existence, it's in gratitude of us, because this being is actually benevolent. It's pure love. But if we don't have access to that awareness, and now we believe that money is what creates love. It's what creates happiness. It's what creates joy. We want to climb this ladder of society in order to get to the very top so we could have a little bit of something to live for. We're not at the total bottom, you know. So society creates money. The cell in the body decides, I'm going to be the ruler of the body. It's absurd. But money created the illusion that you could rule, that you could be the owner, that you could be the collective guardian. Now, what ego is insecure about a lot of things. So people up here are going to be ridiculously insecure. People who have nothing, what's their insecurity? Losing more of what they never really had. It's finding their way down the stairs, falling down the stairs to experience the next reality of lower society. You know, it's being eaten by the vultures, whether that's mentally, emotionally, physically. This could even say at the very top, if I were to lose $100 million or $1 billion or something, I might as well experience myself eaten by vultures. So there's weird psychological developments here between those who have everything and those who have nothing and everything in between. But this doesn't create balance. It doesn't create balance in the body. It doesn't create balance in society. Why this energetic pyramid is here with Earth contained inside, I don't know. But what's important is that we understand that there's this collective guardian that is influencing everything. So, okay. So as I mentioned, I was inspired by North Korea and Kim Jong-un. Here we have, you could say, high society is influencing everyone and everything. Okay, so this would probably be a better version of that. Those who are at the bottom of the pyramid, I experience them as closer to the earth, and those at the top of the pyramid are closer to the collective guardian. but it's all an illusion. Because the illusion of having power, or the illusion of having high society, where does high society exist? It can only exist when you have money that creates division. Then you have high society, low society, you have division, right? Anyway, there's only heart, you know, there's only all, there's only the totality. But we experience reality, how we experience reality versus non-reality. A lot of us might listen, you know, people are going to listen to this and be like, this is a non-reality. This collective guardian thing is just such a laughable, stupid thought. So to them, it would be a non-reality, which is perfectly fine. We all have to exist somewhere in our interpretation of what the world is all about. So this is me sharing my interpretation of my genuine experience. So because of the amputation, because of the illusion of money and power, and the removal then of our connection to the collective guardian, we altered the balance of nature. We altered nature. And through illusion, we altered nature. This collective guardian felt it, and as this collective guardian became disconnected from the cells of its own body, it altered the cells of the body. And so those up here are altered, and it continues to flow on down, just like a waterfall. And all of us are impacted by the collective guardian, and by our ability to support that or experience that or not experience it at all, because our ego is so overinflated that only we could be the closest thing to God. Just like if you're an Egyptian king or whatnot, you'd be God incarnate or something. That's why you're so rich and wealthy. That's why you're such a powerful leader. But no, it was the collective guardian that was always there. The collective guardian is a benevolent being, okay? So, all right, so I wanted to tell you guys this first, just to get your wheels turning, because don't you find it strange that there's this pyramid on the dollar bill? I didn't even make the connection until after I did the journey, and then I decided to draw these pictures. And, you know, Joe and I had been talking about this, and Joe's going to do his own journey into all of this too. But, okay, so I'm just going to tell you about the journey. And in the journey, my intention was to go to whoever is at the top that's influencing everybody else in the whole wide world. And I don't even know if I finished my thought on North Korea, but you know, it's like, yes, I believe I did. It's just the whole concept of in that country versus then we have the world versus then we have, you know, high society versus low society. Like we have all of this separation as who has power and who has worth and value and who has nothing, no worth and value, like, and is starving to death and all of this. How do we bring balance to society, and what influences all of this? What decides the way that it needs to be, you know? So I found myself in this strange place. It was a mountain, is where I was guided. What I thought was a mountain, it was actually a pyramid. But they're not saying it was necessarily a pyramid, but it was like I was in a mountain. But it represents this place, okay? And there was a being, just hear me out, because yes, I'm going to say that the collective guardian looks like this, okay? the being that lives in here in the mountain. But all right, so I drew these pictures, and then I was like, okay, I got to fit this guy in somewhere. So this is the collective guardian. But his face was huge, okay? It was like a big round disc, and it was flat, like it was really thin. There were these edges weren't perfectly, it wasn't like a perfect circle. It was kind of like had these grooves in it, and it was big, and his body was a lot smaller than his head. And then this raised part that had eyes, a nose, and a mouth, and his color was green. I get into this space in a white mountain, and everything was smooth and beautiful and sleek. I thought maybe it was a palace inside a mountain, but there wasn't really any furnishings or anything fancy, other than you could feel that it was something polished and pristine and beautiful, even if it was simple. Well, I found my way in there, and I'm odd, like energetically, I'm more like this, I don't know, like liquid body, and I'm everywhere. And I felt like I was like Coca-Cola. That I was Coca-Cola without bubbles, and I was groggy and brown and confused and disoriented. And then I heard this loud like pounding sound, like a staff pounding onto the hard floor, and it created this echo, and I heard this voice say, "Get out." Something like that. It's like, you're not supposed to be here, get out. Like the energy was like, get out, okay? And so my response to this was, as I'm trying to figure out why I'm this Coca-Cola blob, was no, I am here for a reason. How I got here was I made this intention. I was guided to this space. I'm supposed to be here, like it or not. And I didn't know what this being looked like just yet because I was still groggy. And this being vibrationally was giving me room to be present. Wasn't necessarily this, dismissing what I was saying, but was a bit confused about my presence or why I was there. And I started to see, and I started to look at this being and what it looked like. And I'll be honest, when I saw this being, I got really annoyed. I was like, okay, so you're telling me I made an intention to heal planet Earth, to help the human race, to heal what's at the top, and I'm here? My guides, the whole universe, all the magnetic energy and flow of everything guided me to this weird place and this weird being? I was like, no, I'm not going to have any of this. This isn't where I'm supposed to be. And I was actually kind of talking to myself and saying all this as this being is starting to appear here. And I'm like, no, you're not this. You're not where I'm supposed to be. You're not going to change the world. You're not influencing the world. You're like this nobody. And I found myself kind of circulating, talking to myself, but I was also expressing more about what angers me about the world that I'm seeing and the world that I live in. And I can't protect people in a way that, so it's like something moves the chess pieces and it wants to create a certain outcome, which feels like enslavement. And I'm so tired of it. So this being's listening and he's kind of responding with, you come into my space, you come in complaining. I don't even know how you got here. You're not supposed to be here. I was getting a little more agitated. And what I witnessed was it was sending 40 different aspects, 20 on each side, aspects of something from within itself out. And these aspects were small and they contained a staff, each one that generates electricity. And once the circle came around me, they just generated all this electricity into me to push me out of this space that I was meant to be here. And I said, you can't do anything to push me out. I'm meant to be here. And I'm going to be here. I'm going to stay here until I understand why I'm supposed to be here. Well, I can't really say what happened between that conversation and the next thing, which is me sitting on this chair. The chair that this being was sitting on. I was now sitting on his chair. And this chair is a big deal. This chair, it felt to me like something surreal, like something made in some other version of time and space. Some ancient history, metals we've never come across as of yet. Somehow it was a type of technology. The chair itself was basic, but it was made out of metal pieces and it was like a technology. And when you sit in it, it emits this vibration that creates perfect harmony. Perfect harmony. It's not even an inkling of disharmony. And so anybody who sits on it would be completely healed and be able to live forever. And actually feel alive and passionate and full of love and full of inspiration and could do great things. And I started to learn that whoever sits in this chair is now able to access anywhere, anytime, and be able to morph and shape the world however they want it to. And I started to look at North Korea because I've been thinking a lot about North Korea, and I changed the story. And that's what I did next. Is I sat in this chair, I experienced how crazy it was to sit in this chair. And I made this decision that I was going to help North Korea. I was going to change the story because sitting in this chair gave me the power to make a difference. And so I looked at North Korea and I looked at Kim Jong-un and I said, something is going to change inside yourself and you're going to try something a little different. And you're going to make a decision that gives the people of North Korea something of more room, something of themselves back, something of an opportunity, something of appreciation for them. And it might be small at first, but it's going to snowball. And the more that you give back to the people of North Korea, the more, Kim Jong-un, that you start to realize that it wasn't the power of the mind or the ego or the control that gave you the world you wanted to live in, but it was the love in your heart and the giving back to your people that made it bright and harmonious and powerful, to the point that anybody in the whole wide world would want to actually live in North Korea because it would be such an awesome place to live, because it would have Kim Jong-un as a supreme leader, not of an evil, egotistical mind, but as somebody who actually had heart, who is actually motivated by something of the harmony within themselves to make it a good place to live. And I made that statement, and then all of a sudden I was kind of pulled out of that vision. And I told the universe that, dang it, this is going to happen. I've changed the story, and we're all going to witness this story change. We're all going to witness this story change. I was holding it. I was like confident. I'm determined. This is real, okay? Now, when the energy started to shift, I became aware that I was getting stuck in the chair. And I didn't really understand what this place was still or what any of this meant yet. But the chair is sticky. Like, once you sit in the chair, you're forever in the chair until you are replaced by the next collective guardian, which was basically saying that I was becoming the collective guardian. And in a way, I was the collective guardian for a moment. But let me explain this. So I got a little freaked out about that because I didn't want to stay sitting in this chair, but I couldn't get out of the chair. So I had to project myself out of the chair. So when I project myself out of myself, I look back at myself sitting on the chair, and there was a strange being there. And I'll show you what this being looked like. This being was blue. It was the biggest, fattest blue bird I've ever seen. And it was not like his beak stuck straight out. It was like, it was down like this, okay? It was like a flap or something. It had these huge, enormous, like peacock-sized, enormous feathers, like big fat blue bird with giant feathers and these like little curly cues on its head. And these were huge oval shaped, like dark blue eyes. And it was pure love. Pure love. This being was pure love. And I actually witnessed something else happen. And there were these beings that came that looked like greyhound dogs that stood upright. And they had this like metallic appearance to them. And their mouths became like the circle and like an O shape. And the way that they spoke was in these like these swirls of wind. So when they spoke, they just breathed out and it would create these swirls of wind and it would hit your face heavy or soft for a long period of time, short period of time. And that's how they spoke. And they spoke to me. I couldn't really tell what they were saying other than I was really entranced by that. And they came and they picked up this being who had been through great hardship. This being was not evil. This being has not been the tyranny of the human race. The ego or high society or money or whatever decided to amputate our connection with the collective guardian was what was influencing was the human race. And this being became ill from it, energetically ill. And that would have happened no matter what. It's like if the cell of the body becomes more important than the liver, the spleen, the heart, the brain, just one tiny little cell. Like we need everything to work together in order to do this. You know, we got to all work together. So if you get one rogue cell and now your body, it decides that it's going to be the supreme ruler of the freaking body or something. What then happens to this collective guardian of yourself? You know what I mean? That's what's happened here on Earth. That's what's happened. So I had to bring right to this. I had to bring balance to this. I'm making this video so now you can be, I mean, you can believe whatever you want, whatever is your reality or non-reality, but there's a being like we live inside the body of a higher being. And this higher being is absolutely made out of pure and benevolent love. And the awareness of its existence and the changing of the guard, which seems to happen inevitably so, which was, you know, divine time and all that, and was meant to be what it was meant to be. We've been living in the sickness of a collective guardian's ill body, ill energy field. And we've been inhaling and exhaling the illness at all levels of society, but those who are down here would always remain closer to the influence of the earth. But those who would try to come up here to try to be the collective guardian would be influenced the most by the illness within the collective guardian, or influenced the most by the health of the collective guardian. Imagine this isn't a society of money, but a society of, I don't know, great minds or artistic, talented, motivating people. And then people who are simpler. Like it was okay if you wanted to live a simple life or a complex life, but everybody worked together in society to make it a whole, make it balance within the body of the collective guardian, you know? So this being sat in the chair and I was just dumbfounded by what I was witnessing and what all of this was saying. I thought it was going to be going to something of, I don't know, some kind of evil military, and then I was going to be transmuting and doing all kinds of stuff to kind of clear that heavy, dense, dark, influential energy. But no, I wound up in the most unsuspecting place ever, where I met this weird guy who actually was taken by those mouth speakers. I mean, like, what are they? He was taken to an ocean space. where he was brought into a place of healing, and this guy took over, and there was nothing but love for this man. I sent so much energetic love and respect to this being, and I sent this to this being. I respected all these beings so much. I'm just thinking right now what else there is to say, because this is higher. This, anything that could be this, if this, let's say the military is the highest, most influential, most threatening part of society that's going to get its way. This thing is still more powerful. This is still more powerful. It will always be the most influential aspect of our society forevermore. Do you know how surreal this conversation is? And now imagine the balance. This old energy, this can't sustain. This is not a sustainable energy for the well-being of all. And this, it was time for it to go and for something new to take place. Because in life, there'll always be a death and a birth. So even tyranny will one day die and be reborn into something else. Some new type of tyranny, or something totally benevolent and loving. And maybe it's the balance of all things where we start to work together. It's like life is this, if love and creativity and life, you know, like all that works together, and then we have this like evil death, right? Well, let's say if society is just built upon death, it's not going to be around for very long. But if society is just built upon creativity and life, it also is something about that has to come into balance. It's the whole concept of if the bunny rabbits could rule the prairie, let's say, there are going to be so many bunny rabbits, they're going to end up starving to death because all the dandelions and other flowers and grasses aren't going to be able to sustain the population. So there's always going to be, wow, if only the bunny rabbits could just continue to reproduce forevermore and then never be eaten and they would never starve. But it's like, but that's not balance, you know? So life has to be maintained by death, and death is maintained by life. And when both work together in harmony, we create an incredible society. And so that's the thing that I wanted to tell you guys. I just want to pause for a moment and just see if there was anything else that I needed to say about this. It gave me a totally new vision about the whole wide world. And I'm looking forward to seeing this in my life, and I'm going to stand my ground with it, and I'm not going to waver and tell myself you're living in a fantasy or anything. I'm standing my ground because I can believe in this new story for North Korea. And I'm going to stand my ground that that new story is real and that it's happening right now and that we will witness it in our lifetimes. And I'm going to hug that man in spirit or in human form one day and thank him for having the courage to explore another way. And that he really could be cherished as a savior of people instead of a tyrannical leader. Because would you really want to be known as a tyrannical leader or somebody who actually all the souls absolutely loved and adored you and thanked you for being who you were? And imagine you were both in the same life. How cool would that be? That you would know the spectrum of being all that was tyrannical and scary and terrible and found a way to say, you know what, I'm going to try it differently and I want to explore the heart of who I am and I want to give back. And that you could know that spectrum in one single life. I have the power to forgive people. I have the power to believe that people can change. I have the power to be in awe of people who do choose to change. And I always keep an open door for that because at any time we can awaken and see things in a new way. You know what I mean? Just like the collective guardian and just like the US dollar bill, we're seeing it in a new way. All right. Thank you all so much for giving me the space to tell you this story. Yeah, I hope you're all doing well and I wish you a wonderful day.